there's very few guys in the league that really have a chance to be one of the best 10 or best 5. He's one of them. He's that great.
But with the Minnesota Timberwolves, there's no one specific question, but that I want to outline because there were so many of them. Thank you for those. But the spirit of them were like, what the heck do we do? What do we do in this spot with where we are right now? We got Gobert. There's the video of him with the French national team shooting threes. Towns being involved in some trade talks during the draft period. You got Anthony Edwards on the up and up. You get McDaniels, one of the better two-way players in basketball, an excellent defender. Are you trying to trade Towns right now, Chris? Is that the number one thing in your mind, or are you giving it another chance with the two bigs? With now really three bigs still, because you get Naz Reid on his contract back now. Are you rolling it back like that and seeing if it works in year 2?
I mean, they're saying that they've committed to Gobert and that Towns is going to be the one on the way out. That's what the people I spoke to that cover that team think that that's what's going to be on the horizon. That being said, I have been of the opinion that Towns is a better fit than Gobert with him. I mean, I saw them blow. They took their scars, but I covered that series against Memphis 2 years ago before they got Gobert, and I did not think they were very far away at all. I thought they could have augmented that team and been a real problem, because I am of the opinion that the big that spaces the floor and provides that space for Edwards is the best thing to have with Edwards. And so I actually think Towns is a very good fit with Edwards, but you've got to make a choice there. I think that moving off of Towns and keeping Gobert would be a mistake, but it appears that's what they would do. I think every move that you make has to be, how does this augment the development of Edwards into a super duper star? Because I believe Edwards is going to be one of the best. There's very few guys in the league that really have a chance to be one of the best 10 or best 5. He's one of them. He's that great. And he is still so young. And he's only, on this trajectory, he's going to be one of the absolute best players in the entire NBA. They tried to speed up the process. That's your best player. And he took some lumps last year in the playoffs again. But I do think that, or I guess in the play-in, I do think that he is going to be one of the best players in the league. And so every move has to be to augment that. And so I don't think you need a bunch of stars necessarily around him. I think that you can kind of surround him with some role players. Not all role players, because he's not that kind of a guy. But I would certainly not be against them trading one of the big guys in order to get him some more wings, right? And then anything that can create the space for him, because I don't want him pulling up and shooting a bunch of pull-up threes. He has that you cannot stay in front of me athleticism and size. And so everything that I'm doing is trying to create the maximum amount of space. Their shooting sucked. So, I mean, he's doing everything without it. I want to be able to space the floor as well as I possibly can. And so that's what I'm doing if I'm Minnesota.
I think with Karl-Anthony Towns right now, they're also in a position where he's signed through the 27-28 season, and that year he's going to be making nearly $65 million. So with Karl-Anthony Towns, everybody's talking about Damian Lillard and the money he's making and how tough he could be, to get traded, and why there might be a lack of interest. Then you factor in his age. Well, with Karl-Anthony Towns, it's kind of the same thing, just a different angle towards it. Yes, he's only in his 20s right now, but he's in his late 20s, and he's not a great defensive player, and he's going to be making that significant amount of money into his early 30s. So, like, there's concern there with Karl-Anthony Towns in the eyes of other teams, which speaks to your point about how even though Towns is the guy conventionally people think could be traded if they're split up, maybe it could actually be Rudy Gobert, who's only signed through the 25-26 season. He just doesn't have as many years left on his deal, even though he's older. Perhaps Gobert could be flipped and you just, you eat your losses and end up, reconfiguring in a team that fits the imagination that you have for it, where you're focused on spacing with Towns and Naz Reid sometimes playing together, or they can each play the 5 and fill those 48 minutes as necessary. But with Minnesota, I wonder with them, with the Damian Lillard stuff, right now it seems like we're at a big stalemate. Portland's not, finding a deal for him at this moment. Woj says today how there's no acceptable offer out there. I wonder if at some point Karl-Anthony Towns, probably in a 3-way situation, maybe during the season, if Minnesota could get enough assets for Cat that could be flipped for Damian Lillard with their, other existing assets, of which there is not many, obviously, considering what they gave up for Gobert. But with Minnesota, I wonder if there's any way for them to get in on that. Just throwing that thought out there, because if you're Minnesota and you're talking about maximizing Anthony Edwards, that was part of the reason why they traded D'Angelo Russell and got Mike Conley, having more of that playmaking, traditional point guard presence, sharing the backcourt with him. So finding a player that can do that for Karl-Anthony Towns, for Rudy Gobert, for whatever it is that you're moving out of Minnesota, to me, that's the big priority here, because Mike Conley's 35 years old. He's only got 1 year left on his contract. You got to find a guy for Anthony Edwards who is still just a kid. He's 21 years old that he can grow with in the years to come and who complements him. To me, that's the big priority there. But we'll end up seeing what happens. As Sam said in one of his emails, it seems like with those mega contracts, they're not going to move them. If this goes well, maybe you go into the second apron. Maybe you double down. You don't have any other choice. You go all the way in on these two big lineups if it works better this year. And who knows, man? Maybe with Chris Finch it will after a full offseason. That was a weird last year for Karl-Anthony Towns, missing all that time at the beginning of the season. I mean, I'm not saying that you should scratch it off immediately and say, oh, forget all the bad that happened last year. But, I mean, in some ways, maybe you give it a little bit of a pass and see how it goes with a full training camp going into it. But we'll see. They're going to be interesting.